our last session on classical theories. We have covered so far two theories. One is for Plato, and the other is for Aristotle. The theory which was propounded and introduced by Plato was called, what did we call Plato's theory? The didactic theory or the moral theory. And it is based on which field of knowledge? It's based on which field of knowledge? Ethics, right? Ethics. Because how did we define ethics? We said ethics is a branch of philosophy that examines good behavior. It answers the question, what is good behavior? And what did we call Aristotle's theory? The cathartic theory. And it's based on, is it also based on ethics? No, it's based on medical science. Very good, because catharsis was a Greek medical term. So we covered two theories, and we have two more theories to finish the classical part of the course. The next theory comes from another figure, another thinker, and it's called the theory of the Sublime. And the one who introduced this theory is called Longinus. So we've got Plato, Aristotle, Longinus, and then Horace. Horace was also an ancient Roman poet. Longinus introduced a new theory, which we call the theory of the Sublime. Horace introduced another theory, which we call the aesthetic theory. Now, both theories are based on aesthetics. I'll talk about aesthetics in a minute. You remember, the didactic theory is based on ethics. The cathartic theory is based on medicine. The theory of the Sublime and the aesthetic theory are both based on aesthetics. The one who introduced the theory of the Sublime is Longinus. The one who introduced the aesthetic theory is Horace. Now, you remember, where did Plato introduce his theory? In which book? In which work? The Republic. You remember? The Republic is the source of our knowledge about this theory, the didactic. How about Aristotle? In which of his works did he introduce the cathartic theory? You remember? Aristotle wrote a treatise, a very important book. King Oedipus is a play. It's a literary work. He gave it as an example. It was composed by Sophocles. Sophocles is an ancient Greek dramatist. But Aristotle, the philosopher, introduced the theory of morning. How are you doing? Aristotle introduced his cathartic theory, and he examined Oedipus as an example, as a good example of a literary text that is cathartic. In which of his works, in which of Aristotle's works do we find the cathartic theory? Do you remember? It's not called poetry, it's called poetics. literary text. It's a critical text actually, which is about the cathartic theory proposed by Aristotle. Longinus also wrote a treatise, an important work, in which he explains the theory of the Sublime. And the title of that work is On the Sublime. That's the title of his work. Because it's a book on underlining, you should underline titles of books. And Horace introduced his aesthetic theory in a book also, which he wrote, and which he titled The Art of Poetry. It's also a book, so I'm going to, or in book form anyway. So we have 4 important books in the classical period. What are these 4 important books? The Republic by Aristotle, Poetics by Aristotle, On the Sublime by Longinus, and The Art of Poetry by Horace. These are the 4 important books written by these 4 important writers. And these are the 4 classical theories we should know before we launch into or embark upon modern literary theory. Because these 4 theories they form the foundation of all literary theory to come. So is it clear? Now let's talk about the first theory for today, theory of the Sublime. It is based on aesthetics. And we find it in Longinus' book. He introduced the term On the Sublime. Well, first of all, let's try, before we talk about the Sublime, let's talk about aesthetics. Aesthetics is also a branch of philosophy, just like ethics. Aesthetics is also a branch of philosophy. It examines the concept of beauty. It answers these questions. What is beauty? What makes something beautiful? What are the characteristics of beauty? You remember, ethics answers the question, what is moral behavior? What's good? What's good? What's bad? What's good and evil? Aesthetics answers the question, what is beautiful? What is ugly? What makes beauty beauty? See, what are the characteristics of beauty, etc. You'll say beauty of what? I'll say beauty of everything. Beauty of architecture, beauty of art, beauty of nature, any kind of beauty. Beauty of the human appearance. So it seems that, because it's about beauty, therefore it is related to art. Because as you know, literature is what? Literature is not science. Literature is art. And because literature is art, and art must be beautiful, therefore, literature should possess some characteristics of beauty. In other words, a literary text must have aesthetic aspects, right? A literary text should have some aesthetic aspects. So now you know the meaning of aesthetics? No problem. Aesthetics is a branch of philosophy that examines the concept of beauty. Now, in history, there has always been a clash between ethics and aesthetics. In human history, in the history of civilizations, there has always been a clash between ethics and aesthetics. These two branches of philosophy, as ethics and aesthetics, they always clash against each other. Why? Because many aesthetic issues raise ethical questions. There are many aesthetic issues that raise ethical questions. They contradict the teachings of ethics. How? For example, ethics, of course, is related to what? To religion, right? Morality. Aesthetics is related to beauty. Now, the word beautiful sometimes, is used as a derogative term to mean immoral. Okay? Something which is beautiful is always looked at as immoral. Is the idea clear? Some religious, for example, some religious thinkers, they consider something which is beautiful, they say this is immoral. Why? Because it is beautiful. Why? Because beauty arouses your desires. Is the idea clear? I mean, are you following me? Yes. Like religious thinkers, for example, you show them a painting or something, or a statue, and they say this is immoral. Why? Because it's beautiful. Because it's beautiful, it arouses desires in you. And this is against religion. So there's always a clash between ethics and aesthetics. So take Plato, for example. Plato based his theory on what? On ethics. So we've got here, imagine there's here Aristotle, and here there's Plato, right? Plato based his theory on aesthetics. Longinus and Horace based their theories on aesthetics, and Plato on ethics. So do you think Plato would encourage aesthetics? Do you think Plato would encourage aesthetics? No, he encourages what? Ethics, not aesthetics. Yeah. So there's always this conflict between ethical thinkers and aesthetic thinkers. So do you see the clash between ethics and aesthetics? Is it clear? Yes, please.
Excuse me, sir. Is the clash is with one aspect of beauty or with all aspects of beauty? The clash between ethics and aesthetics?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how much does it contradict ethical principles. If something is beautiful, it's fine, as long as it does not contradict ethical principles, right? Take music, for example. You will ask me, is music against religion? Is religion against music or not? I'll say it depends on the type of music, right? There are religious hymns, right? Religious hymns, religious songs. They're allowed, permissible. But for example, rap music or rock and roll, this is not. It's also music, but it's not considered ethical. Plato himself did not completely object to poetry. He did not completely reject poetry and object to it, right? He said poetry, well, it's fine as long as it is what kind of poetry? As long as it's religious poetry, praises the divine, it's okay. But if it's poetry that arouses negative emotions, then it's not allowed, right? So to answer your question, is the conflict related to one aspect or more than one aspect in aesthetics? The answer is it depends on that, depend on the effect of that aspect on ethical principles. Does it contradict ethical principles or no? If it does, then it's against it. If no, then it's okay, it's permissible. Yeah, okay. Great. So now we have a good idea of aesthetics and the clash between ethics and aesthetics. Now we are ready to move on to the next term, to the next key term, which is the sublime. What is the sublime? Longinus wrote this treatise on the sublime, and he defined the sublime. So what's the sublime? It's very difficult to define the sublime. Even Longinus himself, when he gave us the definition of the sublime in this book, Longinus gave us the definition of the sublime in this book on the sublime, but his definition is vague, is ambiguous, it's not clear. Let's have a look at Longinus' definition of the sublime. He says the sublime, this is not my definition, this is Longinus' definition in his book. He says the sublime is, and I'm going to quote because this is his definition, is the echo of a great soul. This is a quotation from the book on sublime. This is Longinus' definition of the sublime, the echo of a great soul. Why do we define things? We define things to make them clear. But in fact, this definition complicates it even more. Right? I mean, what is the echo? What is a soul? The question is, what's a soul? We have not seen a soul, right? We're told that we have souls. Everybody has a soul. But we don't have an idea of the soul. What does the soul have? It's not tangible. It's not something we can touch or see or hear. So it's not something that we have a clear picture of. And then to make it even more complicated, he says it's not a soul. The sublime is not the soul. The sublime is what? The echo of that soul. Now if I tell you my voice has an echo, you can hear my voice and you can hear the echo of the voice. But we don't know what a soul is. So how about its echo? What is an echo of a soul? If you read a poem, for example, and I ask you this question, can you find the echo of your soul in this poem? Can you do that? It's not something you say, oh yes, this word is an echo of my soul. It's not scientific, right? It's not measurable. It's not something you can feel or it's not a word. It's not a grammatical structure. It's not a sentence. So this is his definition. But let me. But we get the meaning of the sublime not just from this definition, from the entire book. If you read the entire book, you will have an idea of what the sublime is. So what the sublime is, what he means by the sublime is this. Let me simplify it in my own way. Don't you sometimes, like, you read a poem or a book, or you watch a movie, or you listen to some music or song, and you feel that, oh my God, this is one part of it, like, you feel it's really great. And you even get goosebumps all over you. Have you experienced goosebumps? Like if somebody tickles you or something, you feel goosebumps all over your skin. It also comes when somebody, imagine those old green boards and somebody scratches on the board and you say, oh my God, there are goosebumps all over. Or in cold weather, when it's cold, you get goosebumps all over, right? You experience this feeling? Doesn't this feeling sometimes come to you when you're listening to some piece of music or watching a movie or reading a poem or witnessing a situation, right? It happens, right? Well, that is exactly the sublime. If you get that feeling, then you will say, this is the sublime. Like you're watching a sentimental movie, and there is a scene which touches you. And when it touches you, like you feel goosebumps all over, and you like it. And you like to watch it over and over again, and you want to show it to your friends, look at this great scene. And then you post it on your social media, right? Because you want everybody to see it. So that's what we mean by the sublime. So if you're reading a poem and you get that feeling, you can safely say this poem contains the element of the sublime, according to Longinus' theory of the sublime. Now I have a question. We don't get goosebumps all over, right? The text. It's not like, imagine you're sitting with some friends and you're watching a movie. And the movie is 90 minutes long at least, right? 90 minutes long. 1 hour and a half. You're not going to get goosebumps from the beginning to the end, right? No, it doesn't happen like that. So you get goosebumps like one scene, you know. You can't just jump from time to time. Oh my God, I got goosebumps. Oh my God, I got goosebumps, right? It doesn't happen. It happens only in some parts. And this is what Longinus says. Longinus says the sublime cannot be, there in the literary text from the beginning to the end. No, it's one part of the text, maybe 2 parts, but not from cover to cover, no. I hope the idea is clear. Great. He says the sublime is like, it elevates, this is what he says, you are elevated, it elevates your spirit. It transports you, that's what he says, to a new spiritual level. You feel you're transported to a higher level of existence. This is how you feel. And the word sublime itself, the word sublime itself means high, by the way. That's why because you feel high, spiritually high. Okay? Now, if you ask Longinus, how can if I'm a poet and I want to write poetry which contains the element of the sublime, how can I do that? The answer is your style. So the sublime is about style. It's about style. And by style we mean we mean language, the way you use language, the way you use diction, vocabulary, sentences, structure, figurative language, literary devices. But not in a very complicated way. No, he's against, Longinus is against complicated language. Because he says the sublime doesn't mean you use difficult words and all to show off. No, that's not the sublime. Sublime is simplicity, is grandeur in simplicity. So it's great and simple at the same time. It's simple, but at the same time so great. It doesn't mean you use complicated words and difficult words. No, that's not the sublime. That's bombastic. We call that style bombastic style. Sublime is different. Okay. And he gives you an example of the sublime. You will find it in the video I'm going to upload for today's session. From Sappho's poetry. Sappho is an ancient classical poet, and she wrote this ode, which she called Ode to Jealousy. Ode to Jealousy. And in Ode to Jealousy, in this poem, we find the elements of the sublime. Who gives us this example? Longinus himself. He cites Sappho's Ode to Jealousy. You will find the ode in the video. She is talking about her feelings. She feels jealous. She is in love with a man. And she feels jealous when she sees him with other women. Okay? So she talks about her feelings of jealousy. And the way she uses language, the diction, the metaphors, the figures of speech, the style, they contain this element of the sublime. For Longinus, this is a very good example. This ode to jealousy, is a very good example of the sublime. We have a woman describing her feelings of love and jealousy. For Longinus, this is a very good example. But imagine if you show this poem to Plato. Would he like it? No. For him, you should be banned from the Republic. Okay. So, is the idea of the sublime clear? Yeah. Great. Now, it's a fear. The fear of the sublime is just like any other literary fear. And it's an aesthetic fear. Why? Because it is based on aesthetics. How? Because it's based on style, the way you use language. The sublime makes this poem beautiful. But there are two problems. We have two issues we have to consider about this book. Can you apply this theory today? No, you can't apply it. Yeah, you can, but it's now out of fashion. For two reasons. Number one, it also depends on reader response, right? Because it's just like the cathartic theory. How do you know this poem has the element of the sublime? From the reader's response, from the reader's reaction. Okay, you're a reader. You are the critic and at the same time the reader. But are you enough as a sample, as a research sample? No, you're not enough. A research sample should not contain one individual, one item. Any experiment that contains a sample should have at least 25 people to experiment on for results. You need 25 readers. So you have to make a questionnaire or a survey and hand it out to 25 readers to check their responses. They get goosebumps or not. But in this way, you have to explain to them what a sublime is, right? How can you make a questionnaire and then ask them, do you think there's an element of the sublime in which part? They'll ask you, what is the sublime? So you have to give them a lecture on the sublime before making the survey, which takes a lot of what? Time and effort. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's very difficult really to apply. This is number one. Number two is out of fashion. Classical theories are out of fashion, but they are indispensable. We have to study them, even if we don't use them. Why? Because they lay the foundation of all the upcoming theories. Alright, so I said there are two issues. This is the first issue. The second issue is if you ask Longinus, what's the purpose of poetry or literature? What was Plato's answer to this question? What is the function or purpose of literature? To?
Avoiding everything, it's not true.
Yes. So the purpose of literature, very good. The purpose of literature is to do what? Is to edify us, to teach us, to make us better citizens in the Republic, to serve the Republic, right? To make us moral human beings, to teach morality. Okay. How? Through direct instruction. Okay, this is Plato's answer. If you ask Aristotle, what is the purpose of poetry or literature? What was his answer? His answer was the same. To purify us, to make us moral beings. So what is the difference between Plato and Aristotle? There is no difference in the purpose of literature. As to the purpose of literature, they agreed. But they disagreed as to the method of purification. Plato said you can purify an individual by teaching that individual morality, planting the seeds of morality in that individual. Aristotle said you can purify a person and make him a moral being by doing what? By taking out, extracting all these negative feelings. How? Through catharsis. So they both agreed. Well, if you ask Longinus and Horace, what is the purpose of literature? They would give the same Platonic answer. To purify us, to make us moral beings. But the method is different. Longinus says you can purify a person through what? Through the sublime, through style. How? When you feel affected by a poem, when you are touched by a poem, that poem will stick in your mind, right? You will like it, you will admire it. And when you admire something, you follow it, you imitate it. Is the idea clear? If a poem attracts your attention, you will keep remembering it. You'll never forget that poem. And this is true. I mean, I told you, when you like a song, you keep repeating that song, right? Over and over again. And it will stick in your head. It will stick in your mind. It will like program you. And the sublime will attract your attention to the literary text. will be planted in your mind, and you will keep remembering it, and you will admire it and follow. In this way, and if this text is good, then it's going to affect you positively, and this leads to purification. Is it clear? Plato would disagree, but Longinus said, well, language, through language, you can do whatever you like. With language is like a weapon, right? A two-edged weapon, you can do whatever you like. So the purpose of literature is the same. It's to purify us, to plant morality in us, but different methods. There are different methods of doing it. But the destination is the same. The objective is the same. Just like, they say, all roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Rome. There are different roads, but all of them take you to Rome. So all these philosophers, they agreed that the ultimate goal or objective of poetry is to teach a moral lesson. But there are different ways of reaching that, of obtaining that goal. Okay. You see, there's this question that those philosophers always asked: what is the use of literature? What's the use of poetry? As you know, poetry and literature is what? Is it an art or science? Poetry is what? Art. It's not science. And this question is a very difficult question. Why do we study literature? Why do we study art? You see, if I ask you, why do we study science? It's not a big question, right? Everybody knows the answer. It's not a very difficult question. Why do we study science? Everybody can answer that question, and everybody agrees. Like, why do you study medicine? Is it useful? So of course medicine is useful. Are you following me? Well, why do you study engineering, computer science? Why is it important? Is it really important? Nobody today asks this question. Why is computer science, why is it important? We consider this a stupid question, right? Everybody knows the answer. The answer is very clear. Nobody today asks the question, why is medicine important? Right? Yeah, science, we don't have a problem with science, with the purpose and function of science, the importance of science. But the problem is the importance of art. We can live without art. We can survive without art. Then why do we need art, poetry? The students always ask me this question. Why are we studying poetry? Right? So you see, these philosophers try to, explain the existence of art. They were not concerned. They didn't bother about the existence of science. It's very clear the use of science and the importance of science. Okay? So is the idea of the sublime clear? So now we move on to our last theory, theory number 4, the aesthetic theory by Horace. Horace also wrote this treatise, Art of Poetry, in which he explained his theory, which is the aesthetic theory. Horace also said the ultimate goal of literature is to teach a moral lesson. But he said You cannot teach moral lessons directly. Plato said you have to teach directly. Horace said no. Direct teaching is boring. This is what Horace said. Direct teaching is boring. Imagine somebody just giving you a lecture without a sense of humor, without, just words thrown at you. You feel bored, right? You feel bored. You need some fun. You need fun in order not to feel bored. Because if you feel bored, you will not learn anything. Maybe it doesn't apply to us because we are adults, but take, for example, children. Can you give a child a lesson in history by just directly letting the child sit down and then you just lecture the child on history for 1 hour? No, the child will feel bored and will not learn anything. Or even language. How can you explain the simple past in English to a child through direct instruction, just words? The child will feel bored and will not learn anything. And that's why in many schools today, they use games to teach children, right? And this method of teaching is called gamification. When you use games, children will learn better because they'll have fun. They will enjoy your class. But if they feel bored, they will not enjoy your class and they'll either sleep or not attend your session again, right? So this is what Horace said. Horace said, direct teaching is boring, and when it's boring, nobody will learn the moral lesson. What's the use of giving a moral lesson to a person who's bored? They'll not get the moral lesson. In order to plant this moral lesson inside your reader's mind, you have to make it spicy, right? To make it like fun, to entertain. Just like having a dish of your favorite dish, but without salt, without spices, you will not enjoy it, right? You won't enjoy it. It's just like tea without sugar. Okay? For example. So this is what Horace said. Horace said, yes, you have to teach a moral lesson, but not directly. You have to entertain at the same time. So he said, you should please and teach at the same time, or teach by pleasing. Morality and pleasure should go together. Morality mixed with pleasure, entertainment. Who introduced this theory? Horace. What do we call it? We call it the aesthetic theory. It comes from aesthetics. Where did he introduce this theory in his work, The Art of Culture? He also said, Horace also introduced the theory or the concept of decorum. He said every literary text should have decorum. If it does not have decorum, it will not teach. It will confuse the reader. What does he mean by decorum? Let me explain his concept of decorum. According to Horace, decorum means suitability. Now let me explain. Let's start, before I give you an example from literature, let me give you an example from everyday life. Suppose you have a guest today, and your guest asks for some juice, all right? You want to serve your guest some juice. Would you like some orange juice? Okay, thank you. So you go to your kitchen to prepare a glass of juice, to fix a glass of juice for your guest. Now you've got juice, all right, but your juice is in a bottle. Are you going to serve the bottle? No, you have to pour some juice into a glass. Now you open the cupboard doors and you find different types of glasses. There's a water glass, juice glass, there's a coffee cup. There are different types of cups and glasses. Which one are you going to take, to select? The glass, which we call juice glass. There are glasses specially designed, made for juice. There are glasses designed for water. There are glasses for wine, glasses for beer. There are, in fact, 50 kinds of glasses and cups for different types of liquids. So you select the juice glass, pour some, fill it up with juice, and serve it to your guest. Are you going to take a coffee cup, like those small Turkish coffee cups, and put juice in it, and then here you are, that's your juice. He's going to say, oh my God. He'll say, either you are a miser, or you don't know anything about etiquette. Right? Okay. So, the same holds true with literature. In literature, it's the same thing. Let me give you an example. In drama, we have two main genres of drama, which are tragedy and comedy. Very good. In tragedy, you should find sadness, grief, sorrow, tears, crying. All the events in the plot should be sad, tragic. In a tragedy. In a comedy, all the events must be what? Comic, funny. You cannot mix them both together. For example, in a tragedy, you should not put events which are funny. And in a comedy, you should not place events which are sad. Don't mix them together. According to the principle of decorum, you should not mix them together. If you mix them, you will confuse the reader. The reader will feel bored again and lost and cannot really concentrate. What's the moral lesson? You will confuse your reader. Okay? Of course, not everybody followed Horace's teachings. For example, later on, after the classical Greece and Rome fell, and then came in England, we have a period called the Renaissance, and Shakespeare was one of the figures of the Renaissance. Shakespeare did not follow these classical rules. For example, in Shakespeare, you have tragedies which have comic scenes inside them. We call them comic relief, right? In a tragedy, you have comic relief. For example, Hamlet, the gravedigger scene in Hamlet. Hamlet is a tragedy, but it contains comic relief. In Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, there's a comic relief when Dr. Faustus' servant Wagner tries to conjure some ghosts, some spirits, and they start chasing him. And there's a funny scene there. And in Shakespeare's comedies, there are some tragic events. So they were not really following the principle of decorum according to Horace. So if you want to apply Horace's theory to any literary text, what do you search for? You search for the moral lesson, and you have to show how this moral lesson is taught, is given in a pleasant way. In a pleasant way, to please. Now, by the way, please does not mean you have to laugh. No, please means you are interested. You don't feel bored. You don't feel bored. It doesn't mean you have to laugh. No. Sometimes you cry. Sometimes you enjoy crying, right? I mean, sometimes, for example, some people, they watch sad movies. And they say, I like it because it's tragic. We enjoy tragedy, right?
Yes.
We enjoy tragedy. So even tragedy, the point is not whether you laugh or not. The point is, do you enjoy it or not? By pleasing, we mean enjoyment. You enjoy it. Sometimes we enjoy funny things. Other times we enjoy sad things, right? But the point is, you are not feeling bored. You're not feeling bored. We enjoy tragedy. Does it mean there is no pleasure? No, there is pleasure in tragedy because we're enjoying the sad events, as long as they're not happening to us. Right? So we're enjoying. So this is Horace's theory. The principle of decorum, we said it means what? Suitability. It means you should not mix. And I gave you an example in the video I'm going to upload. A very good example from The Voice. The Voice is a poem by the modern writer, modern poet, Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy wrote this beautiful poem, The Voice, about the death of his wife. Thomas Hardy loved his wife so much. When she died, after she died, he felt really bad. So he wrote this. He said, everywhere I go, I keep hearing her voice. So he wrote this poem, very nice poem. He called it The Voice. It's about the voice of his wife and how it lingered in his ears even after her death. So in that poem, he uses a special rhyme. You know what rhyme is in poetry, of course, right? He uses a special kind of rhyme which suits the theme. He uses what we call feminine rhyme. We call it feminine rhyme. And a feminine rhyme starts with high pitch, then moves down. So it moves like this. So the volume goes down. Okay? It's one word, but it goes down, like when you say endlessness. Okay? 3 syllables. The first one is stressed, and the other 2 are not stressed. This is called feminine rhyme. Because it goes down, like when you say endlessness. Okay? The second and the third syllable, they sound like an echo of the first syllable. Okay? The second and the third syllable sound like an echo because an echo goes down, right? In volume. And this reflects the echo of her voice. It's like the echo of her voice. And also remember, this is what kind of rhyme did we call this? It's feminine rhyme. And the entire poem is about his wife. So it suits the occasion, it suits the theme, it suits the topic. So this is suitability. This is a very good example of decorum. You'll find the poem in the video and the explanation of the poem. So this is Horace's theory, the aesthetic theory. How many theories do we have? Four theories, four classical theories. And we're done with them. There's a nice anecdote, just for fun, about decorum. They say there's this, you see, we said that there are different kinds of glasses, right? Different types of gloves. There's this Frenchman who was aboard of a ship. He was on a ship, and then the ship started sinking. So everybody, all the passengers on the ship, had to jump for their lives and swim safely to the shore. Because what do you do? The ship is sinking, so we're not going to stay on board. So everybody jumped into the water and started swimming. So this French guy, he jumped into the water and started swimming his way to the shore, to the island. On the way, there was a shark. Okay? A shark approached him to attack him. He happened, by chance, to have a knife in his pocket. So as this shark was approaching, he took out the knife and he had the chance to stab the shark, kill the shark, and save his life, right? But he didn't do it. And he let the shark attack him and eat him and kill him. Because he noticed, when he held the knife in his hand, he said, "Oh my God, this is not fish knife, this is cheese knife. I cannot use it for a fish." Right? So, because it was cheese knife, not fish knife, he didn't use it to kill the shark. Yeah, right. He was the victim of decorum. Alright? He was just following, and this is an example of a person who really follows etiquette. It reminds me of Oscar Wilde. Once Oscar Wilde said, Oscar Wilde loved etiquette a lot. And once he said, "Even when I am on an island, alone, on a desert island, there's nobody with me, I would still dress up for breakfast." Okay? He would still dress up for breakfast. Follow etiquette. Well, there's a short video I'm going to share with you. It summarizes all these theories in a few minutes. I'll also post it. And if I don't, please remind me. Okay? Exactly. So thank you very much, students, for attending this session. Have a great day, and see you next.